Hello and welcome to Artifacts with Edie, a live show and tell of the artifacts here at the Summit County Historical Society. My name is Edie Steiner and I'm a music therapist with Akron Public Schools at Bridges Learning Center. I'm also the shepherdess here at the Summit County Historical Society. Today we're going to talk about gardening. For those of you that have been watching us since April, you may remember that World War II victory gardens were featured in week 4. Families back on the home front planted beautiful gardens, and neighbors sometimes worked together to plant one big plot to help in the war effort. Growing their own food allowed for more crops to be shipped over to our Allied soldiers during while they were fighting against the Axis powers in Europe and in the Pacific. The Victory Garden book from the 1940s states that this is a small garden plan that would have been 15 feet by 25 feet. That seems like a pretty big garden to me. The book included measurements on how far apart the plants your different crops and how to help them grow better. And there are actually 16 different fruits and vegetables in the garden plan. And the plan helps victory gardeners learn where to plant their seeds too. If you follow it closely, you'll have fruits and vegetables all summer long. Hey, what's that sound? I guess Rudy is trying to remind me to talk about pollinators by showing off his own pollination skills. You're right, Rudy. Without seeds, we would have very few new plants and therefore far less food. So some plants need insects or animals, in Rudy's case, to deposit the grains of pollen in their flowers so a seed can be produced. No, boys, dogs don't actually pollinate seeds, but I appreciate how you're always really willing to be helpful. Pollinators that you may be familiar with are birds and butterflies and bees. And did you know that bats are also pollinators too? Wow! This morning, the Society's education staff taught young scholars how to garden, and they talked about the importance of 3 S's: seeds, soil, and sun. And one other thing that doesn't begin with the letter S. What could it possibly be? Well, it helps your garden grow, and yes, it is. Good old H2O, water. Nutrients in the soil, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, make a seed germinate from a small little object to a growing and living thing, producing fruits, vegetables, flowers, or even trees. Here on Mutton Hill by the Perkins Stone Mansion, the home of Akron and Summit County's founding family, they garden too. When the Perkins family moved here, the hillside was covered with trees that they had to cut down and clear the land to dig a well. Once they dug the well, then they built a house and planted a garden for food. In the 1830s, and that's 190 years ago, people grew a lot of their own food. And we know now that the Perkins family had a lot of fruits and vegetables, fruit trees and flowers in their garden. They even had paths through the garden to make it easier to reach what was produced. Can you see the grape arbor in the image? Yum, I can just imagine eating one of those delicious grapes right now. Talking about eating, the animals on the farm also ate the fruit that was grown in the fields. And last week we talked about my flock of Katahdin sheep that you can visit on Fridays and Saturdays here on Mutton Hill. They like to eat grass and hay, and their favorite sweet treat is corn. Imagine that you are a seed. What do you need to grow? Food, water, sunlight, and puppy snuggles? Oh, well, maybe that's just me. Our brain needs to learn and to grow, and that's what we're doing here. Your brains are smarter and healthier just by learning new things. So let's test the strength of your brain by doing our review before we reveal the artifact of the day. We talked about the importance of the 3 S's for gardening. So see if you can remember which S I'm leaving out. Seeds, soil, and I know you can do it. I'll say it one more time. Seeds, soil, and you must go to sun school because you're pretty bright. You're right, it is sun. So question 2, name 2 types of pollinators. If you said birds, butterflies, bees, and even bats pollinate and plant seeds, you are correct. Did you notice that I didn't give you a bee pun there, though? Because I was afraid that it might really sting. So last question, though. This one is a writing prompt, so get your pencils ready, or you could type your answer in the comments. My favorite garden memory is, your answer should tell us about your favorite garden memory, a memory that you have. Maybe you grew a giant tomato, or you have a flower growing in your garden that once belonged to somebody special in your life. I can't wait to hear you share your garden memories today, and I'll share mine later in the comments today. So again, that is my favorite garden memory is, and you just finished the sentence. So let's go to our artifact of the day. Today's artifact helps farmers put seeds in the soil. It is a corn seed planter. Corn or maize has been a staple crop in North America for about 10,000 years. Early immigrants to what we now call the United States observed how Native Americans and American Indians sowed and harvested their crops. So actually, this crop is what saved early settlers, as it provided the sustenance they needed during the hard winters so they wouldn't starve. It can also have a high yield, which means you can grow a lot of it. 1 seed of corn can produce 1,000 kernels of corn, those sweet little niblets that you nibble off the cob. In the Native American town of Secota in today's Virginia, the crops were planted near the village. They even built a little cottage near the cornfield for someone to watch over the growth to keep the birds and the animals out of it. In 1588, Thomas Harriot, an English astronomer visiting the Americas, wrote that American Indians first loosened the soil with wooden hoes. They then used a wooden pecker or a dibble to dig a hole in which the planter planted 4 seeds, not touching, and finally gently covered them with soil. These hills were planted in rows, and each row has a space of a half of a fathom or a yard from the last. And these holes are each a row, a distance the same, they are the same distance apart. That's what Harriet wrote. So what he described is the invention of the checkered corn row in Virginia. And what is a checkered row, you ask? Well, by definition, checkered in agriculture, in a row of plants, especially corn, in which the spaces of the plants are equal to those between the rows to help them grow. It might remind you a little bit of a game that you can play today, checkers. But let me remind you that planting a garden is no game. It is definitely hard work. So this seed planter, invented in the 19th century, saved the farmer a lot of time and from having to bend over continuously and drop a seed into the ground. The tip of it would go into the ground, and by opening the 2 handles, the seeds would be deposited into the soil. So seeds would be placed in this container, and then it would be drained out through the tip as the handles were opened and closed. So talking about opening and closing, I think that our sheep have decided to take a mid-afternoon nap. So that must be my cue to harvest some lunch and something from our garden. So I will see you next Friday at 11:30 a.m. right here on Facebook for our next episode of Artifacts with Edie. Don't forget to join us also at the Summit County Historical Grounds at 550 Copley Road every Friday at 10:30 a.m. for Farm Fridays and on Saturdays. So check back with us for all of the details and times on Facebook. So thank you again for joining us from the Summit County Historical Society, where history is always within reach. Thank you.